Hello and welcome to today's podcast. This is the iArt Daily podcast, creative conversations with artists about art. This is our first kickoff episode of this podcast sponsored by I Create Daily. And we're joined by one of our favorite artists. She's a Finnish fantasy artist from Finland, and she does fantasy art. Her name's Eeva Nikunen, and we've interviewed her a couple times on the I Create Daily podcast, so we'll link those and you can hear more about her story and her creative journey. But today we're doing an art class with Eeva about ink art and how she goes through inking her art, the tools she uses, questions we'll have about her coloring books that she's created. And so do you want to explain more?
Yeah, no, that's perfect. That's a great intro. So yeah, Eeva, we're really excited to learn. I think you were going to start off. Well, actually, yes, we did want to ask you just before you get started sharing the art supplies you use. You have been doing a lot of art exhibits and shows, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Would you like to just give us a summary of what you've been up to in that regard before you get into sharing about your art supplies and then your art process?
Yeah. Well, this year it started with a solo show at a gallery in New York called the Haven Gallery. They did a solo show in January, and after that, I've been just the springtime was kind of like preparing for the summer shows. I do some conventions and art shows. So this year I did, in August, there was a convention in Dublin in Ireland, which is it's a famous convention called Worldcon, and it's usually in the US. So sometimes it travels around the world, and this year it was in Ireland. And since I live in Europe, it was a bit closer to me than to go to the US. So I joined that, and they have a great art show, and it's a possibility for artists to sell original art as well as prints and books and stuff. That was great.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and also did just a few local conventions here in Finland, what we have here. So.
Okay, fantastic. Have you yet done the one where they're featuring like the Finnish legends and myths?
I did. It was like an art show. It was. I live in the southern part of Finland, which is like the capital. So this art show it was kind of like in a small town in the center of Finland, like in a little town in the middle of the forest. So it's a really nice place. But it's they have like a music and art festival there. So they asked me to do some drawings inspired by Finnish mythology. And there's a lot of like forest creatures and fantasy stuff in those stories. So the art show was based on that. And actually, because I'm always trying to figure out how to use my art in as many places as possible. The drawings that I did for this art show are actually the ones that are going to go into the coloring book that I'm currently working on.
Fantastic. I love that you mentioned that, because we have articles on the concept of multi-purposing your art. In fact, you're one of the feature artists that we've profiled relative to that. And if you create one thing, how it is that you take that one thing and produce it into the many, which is essential really for any professional artist, because otherwise you can't just do one painting and leverage that time. You have to find, but not only is it essential, for the growth and survival of your business, but also it's wonderful to be able to take the one thing and turn it into many more versions.
Yeah, that's it's essential to do that, because you only have so much time to do art and draw and paint, and usually it takes a long time to finish a piece. So you want to use it in as many things as possible. So that's what I've been doing.
And you work with oils a lot, and those take a long time to dry, so it takes even longer. Like acrylics are a quick dry thing, but oils are quite a process.
Yeah. One of the questions, sorry, go ahead.
All right. Go ahead.
Now, I was just going to say, one of the questions we have for you is about which version of your creations tends to sell the most, but we'll wait and have you answer that question at the end. If you want to go ahead first and share about the art supplies that you use.
Yeah, so for I'm working on a coloring book, and I'm actually almost done. My goal was to do 20 ink drawings and to publish it first as like a PDF coloring book that people can download. And then after that, I could do it into a physical book. So I'm almost done with that, and I use a special paper for the coloring book pages because it's ink. And there's a really great paper by Canson. It's called, I don't know if you can see it, it's illustration paper.
Mm-hmm.
And it's specifically meant for like ink drawing and comics and stuff. So it's really good for ink. And the pens I use are these Japanese micron ink pens.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like very good combination, just like a recommendation if you want to do your own coloring pages. I think these are really good tools.
And is the Canson illustration paper, what mediums does it support? Is it mainly just for ink, the paper? Anyway?
It's very thick paper, so I think you could use it for watercolor as well, or maybe not for acrylic, maybe it's not for that, but graphite, ink, watercolor, I think would work great, even colored pencil.
Okay, cool, great.
And do you have a weight on the pack? Does it show, because they might have different weights, does it show weight?
Yeah, it does. It's 250 grams. It's 90
pounds.
90 pounds, yeah, that's
okay.
Awesome.
Yeah, they call it, let's see, the one here that comes up, they have a watercolor one as well, 90 pounds. Does that one show multimedia?
It's illustration paper on the label.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, this says it's illustration paper. It's for manga and comics. That's the one that I'm using for.
Perfect. And we'll link all the tools you mentioned in the notes. So awesome.
Yeah. Now, so if you're using that, when you're creating individual pages. Yes. When you create your coloring book, then how do you work with that? Do you just put in the request like for the 90-pound paper to your printer, or are you actually using the Canson paper in your coloring books?
No, I'm just, so when I actually have one original page here. This is a finished coloring page that I drew, this original. So what I do is I just scan this into my computer, and then I use a program called InDesign to design the coloring book. So I just import the scanned images into the InDesign program, and then I just make the coloring book there. So my goal is to sell all the original drawings for the coloring book. So there's that's another way to use the art, to sell the originals and display them in art shows and use them in the coloring book and stuff like that. So yeah, and I could even do a painting based on this drawing because I drew it, and I could use it as inspiration for my next piece or something. So
definitely,
yeah, for sure. So when you submit your InDesign illustrations, is it just a regular coloring paper, or is there a specific kind of paper you use for the coloring book?
There's different kinds of papers. I did my first coloring book back in, I think it was 2016. And when I was making that coloring book, I had a few options. Usually a thicker paper is better because people want to use, some people want to use watercolor to coloring books, so, and not just colored pencil. So a thicker paper, I think it's better. So, but that's something that everyone has to kind of decide for themselves, because it's a matter of cost as well.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but there are a lot of options of what kind of paper can go into a coloring book. So.
Okay,
awesome. Cool.
Great. All right. Well, carry on with any other supplies you need to show or have to show.
No, except just those simple supplies. I just I did a short time-lapse video of this latest ink drawing, and in it you can kind of see that I do a very light graphite sketch on the paper before I start inking, because you can't erase ink once it's down.
Yeah.
So I kind of, especially if there's like a human character, I like to do a little light graphite drawing before I start inking.
Well, that's a really good point, because you can't use whiteout either, and so in a way it's so much more difficult, I would think, to do an ink drawing than a painting, because you can cover over, you know, paint oftentimes with another color, right?
Yeah, so it's I've actually learned a lot about drawing this year just doing the coloring book. It's been like for me a great challenge, because usually when I'm drawing I use graphite and you can just work it. Then you can just erase what you don't want to be on the paper, but ink is different. So whatever you put down, it stays on the paper and you can't really get it off anymore.
Right. Now, can you edit that though in Illustrator?
Yes, you can, but I try not to. It's kind of my thing, because I work traditional. I want the original piece to be the same that's in the coloring book. But of
Yeah.
course, you could do adjustments in Photoshop and yeah.
Right.
it's
So
possible.
then, so your goal is to sell the originals that are going into the coloring book. So then how does that work? From the paper that you created, that you then scan into your computer and create a digital version through Adobe Illustrator, which one becomes your original that you then paint and sell?
Well, the original drawing is the original artwork. So the ones that I drew on the Canson paper,
Okay.
those are the ones that I usually, if I sell them at shows, I will frame this, so it's like a piece of art. And I also sell these online, and usually then they are not framed, because it's a bit cheaper to ship paintings without frames. So
When you sell the original, do you go ahead and paint it yourself, or are you selling it as something somebody else can color in if they want?
Or just as the black and white art?
It's
Yeah.
just
ink,
yeah, it's just
the
the
ink
black
art.
and white art.
Cool.
Yeah. So now you have the black and white art, the ink art original that you can frame or not and sell as original art. And then you have also that same file that you could print out and then color as then a painted version.
Well, what I would do with this is just when I have the ink drawing here, and if it's something that I would like to paint, then I just use a different medium. I just use the original drawing as an inspiration, and then because when I do color work, it's usually always oil paint, so that's a totally different medium. So I would just use this as an inspiration sketch for the painting.
I see. I see.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't be like coloring in your own drawing to then sell as a colored version. You would rather recreate it. Got it. Okay, cool. That makes sense.
Awesome.
Okay.
Well, do you want to do the screen share of your video and any commentary that you want to include with that?
Yeah, let me see if I can share my screen. Let's see.
And for anybody listening to this, we have the video itself on YouTube, and you'll want to watch that.
Right.
If you can.
Can you see my screen now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So I do these short time-lapse videos. I just record them with my iPhone, and they're very simple to do if anyone wants to record their own videos, because it's just the iMovie app on the iPhone.
Do you, so are you using an iPhone stand, or have it like taped to something above you, or how do you have it set up?
Yeah, I would like to buy, actually I'm in the process of searching for like an arm for the iPhone, so I can kind of like put it in a better position, because now I just have this like straight stand like next to me, and it's a bit awkward when it's like it's too close to me, and it's kind of like it doesn't work that well. So I'm actually just kind of looking at Amazon to get something better.
Yeah.
But this is what I have right now. So
great.
Yeah. So it is. This is the newest drawing that I did, and I usually draw a border here just to. It's like 1/4 of an inch, I think you say.
So
inches.
Eva, before you continue,
Yeah.
would it work for you to expand your screen?
Oh yeah, that's a good idea.
There we go.
Is it better now?
Yeah. Yes.
There we go.
Okay.
So okay, so you're doing the border freehand.
I have a light graphite line under.
Okay.
You can just see it on the video.
Okay.
So I
Yeah.
just so I'm just inking that in because this is something that you don't have to do, but I like to do it because I like the drawing to be inside the frame, so I know like what parts of the image I want to draw. So I just
Good.
draw the frame
Okay,
around
cool.
the image, and that's the way I display them in the coloring book as well, so you can see the frame you're drawing.
Okay, great.
And here you can also see that this is the graphite drawing that I have. This is not inked yet, so I drew the face with graphite, so I just knew that I wasn't gonna mess it up too bad
Yeah.
in the beginning. So that's how it started, and that's now I'm starting to ink the face and the hair, and then I kind of like I don't have all the lines drawn with the graphite. Then I just start like improvising with the ink because I've already drawn many of these. So I still have some light graphite lines here, and then just draw over them. So, and now I'm just erasing all the graphite lines that I still had on the paper, so you can't see them in the final piece.
Okay.
I'm just doing some additional details. And for this drawing, the character was the most important part, so I wanted to draw her first to get it right. And after that, I just started sketching the background with the graphite pencil.
And
So you sketch the background after you establish the most important piece on your art, right?
Yeah, so the character, I wanted to get her right on the paper, and when I was satisfied that it's gonna work out, and then I was like, okay, now I can draw the background.
So
sorry.
Does your character have a name? Does this one?
This is the Autumn Princess.
Lovely.
Because my coloring book, the theme is kind of like enchanted seasons. So it goes from spring to summer, from autumn to winter. So that's kind of the theme of the book.
Lovely.
Awesome.
So this is like an autumn piece. It's my favorite season, so just Autumn Princess.
Nice.
And in this particular video, you're doing a speed drawing of a human or elf character. When you do other things like animals, is like if like you've done owls and different birds, do you also start with that creature?
I usually do, because usually the hardest thing to draw is like the human character, or if there's animals in the image. I usually want to draw them first, because if I drew the whole background and then I made a mistake on the main characters in the piece, I would have lost a lot of time. So I think good idea when you're working with ink is to draw the hardest parts of the drawing first, to make sure that you're happy with them, and then you can kind of move on to the background or other things in the drawing. So
that makes sense.
So I just sketched lightly on the background, and my intention was to just draw a lot of leaves that people could color in the background. So then I just started drawing a lot of leaves. And it took a few hours to get everything done, but this is kind of like freehand. I'm not so this is like the more maybe like enjoyable part of the drawing, because I'm not so scared to get something wrong, because I'm just drawing leaves. So.
And are you drawing it from a sketch that you've created previously, or is it all from your head?
No, this is just freehand, just drawing on I just knew that I was going to draw some tree branches and some flowers and some leaves. So.
And so have you?
Sorry,
go ahead.
I could just draw it like freehand on the paper, because I kind of knew what I was doing.
That's
awesome.
Fantastic.
Cool. And then you just fill in whatever details that pop along with the ink as you're going.
Yeah, and when creating a coloring page, I usually try to think, I try to keep in mind that this is a page that people will color. So I'm trying to not use too much like straight black. I do a little bit of like shading with the pen. You can see like in the middle of the leaves, it gets a bit darker, but I try not to make it too dark, so people can still color it. So.
Yeah, that's a nice balance of giving some darkness for depth, and
Yeah.
texture without overdoing it. So yeah, that looks perfect.
On the ink pen,
Yeah.
are you using, do you use several different tip sizes for the pen, or are you just doing that with one size?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. I use the smallest they have, which is it's 003. It's the smallest point they have of these micron pens. So it's a very tiny, tiny pen, and that's the way that I can get all the very tiny details.
And did you use that same pen for the character as well?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
Just some of the thicker lines you can see, I just went over the line many times to get it a bit thicker. So
Okay, and same thing with the coloring in the shaded areas.
yes, it's just the same pen all
Okay.
the way. They
So
do different sizes, but I like to use the smallest size. I'm just used to that, and you can get all the really tiny details with that pen, and that's what I like. So that's what I
yeah,
use.
and it saves time having to change and decide what other tip to use, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. They do a lot of sizes, so maybe people can experiment like what they like to use the most. So, and there's
Yeah.
the finished drawing. Yeah. So,
Wow, just beautiful, so incredible.
Awesome.
Autumn Princess, yeah,
mhm.
love that. So it'll be interesting. Do you have, from the coloring books that you've sold, have you had people send you examples of their coloring in your
Yeah,
book?
I've seen actually. I also have a Patreon, and I started that last year. And what I've been doing is I draw a custom coloring page each month for my patrons, and that's been a lot of fun because I can see the results, like how they color then, and also sometimes people post on Facebook their colored images so I can see them, and I've seen a lot on Instagram. Actually, yeah, last year I did a book which was not like specifically a coloring book, but it was a journal, and it was black and white, so people have been coloring that as well. I actually have them here. It was called the journal called Enchanted Valley.
Yes,
And yeah, and
it's gorgeous. If people aren't seeing it on the video, can you hold it up again so we can?
oh yeah, that's the cover.
Yeah,
It's Enchanted Valley, and
yeah.
it's a journal with black and white illustrations in it, and you can color the images and also do some journaling. So it has journaling pages,
Very
and
nice.
this was actually the first edition that I published myself, and now I finally have the publisher version here, and it's a bit thicker than the one that I published myself. And
Wow.
what we did was I did 5 additional drawings, and it has a lot more of these like journaling pages, so it's even more like a journal. So
Fantastic.
and
That's awesome.
And are you
yeah.
selling those are not yet available on Amazon US, correct?
Not yet. This is just we just starting this year. So this edition was printed in the US, and we're waiting for a bigger batch of books to arrive from another printer. So this summer, the publisher has been selling these at like conventions in the US, which is great for me because I'm stuck here
Yeah.
in Finland, so I can't get there very often. So I can only sell these online. So it's been great that she's been selling these at the conventions in the US. And
Great.
That's
yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah, well, and that's a good point. So for the US based artists, just recognize how fortunate we are to have, the vast resource of Amazon, as
Yeah.
well as so many shows happening on a regular basis. I know you, Eeva, have come to the US for programs, for educational conferences, as well as for the New York exhibit and that sort of thing.
On the different conventions that you've been to.
Yeah, and of course there's so much going on in Europe as well. But even then, for you, a lot of that means travel. I guess it would be a lot like for us traveling to different states, but which still can get expensive, especially the further the state, often the more expensive the cost. So same thing with you, country-wise.
And still traveling with paintings, which can be a
Yeah,
lot.
that's right.
You mentioned
Yeah.
in our last interview we had with you earlier this year just how much it took for packing your paintings, and that was its own
And shipping it
stressful
for the
process.
New York.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was so stressful.
Yeah.
Yeah, but people like if you're living in the US, like you have so many, like if I was there, I would be doing like a show every weekend, just selling my art.
Yeah.
So take advantage of the opportunities there. So
Yeah, that's a really good point. One of the artists in our community, Linda Suzanne Wright, has a show just about every weekend from now to the end of the year, she was saying. So,
and if you're and if you have local galleries, it might not be big convention shows, but there's always something in local art communities happening,
as well as a lot of fall festivals this time of year. Yeah, for displaying your art. Did you have any other screenshot things to show us before we go into other questions?
no, that was it. It was just it's I encourage everyone to try who's who wants to do a coloring book. It took me actually a few took me some tries to get used to the ink, because I hadn't done a lot of inking for a while, so I kind of like had to learn it again. So like my first ink drawings, I wasn't really happy with them, but I've been just drawing them this year, like so many. So now I'm kind of at this stage where I'm kind of happy with the result, and to combine them into the coloring books.
That's what it takes. Just lots and lots of the 10,000 hours, so to speak, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it is interesting. It reminds me of when I created the My Trainer fitness products, which you're familiar with, laminated workouts, on index cards. And my original thought was,
it'll be easy.
It'll be so simple. It's just like, and instead of writing and taping and gluing workouts clipped from magazines onto these index cards that then you take to the gym, and they kind of the ink starts running, as the water bottle or the card gets sweaty, like, let's create some laminated workouts. Well, then you begin to realize that the vision that's simple is not so simple in execution relative to how do you make a workout, a thorough, complete workout, very clear in a very small space. And then, of course, you have to laminate it, and then you have to hole punch it, which hole punching and 3-ring binders are a lot more expensive than a bound book. So similarly,
and then don't forget the cost of having models and then on top of that, having somebody to design it in a way that it looks simple.
That's right. That had to, exactly.
So it took a couple of years to orchestrate just how the product worked.
It took a year but it was so expensive to produce. So similarly, relative, it's like I can imagine I would have probably had the thought that, create some coloring pages. That's a simple book to do, right?
Yeah. That's what I thought I was,
Yeah, go ahead. So
no, I just thought that I was gonna complete the coloring book in like 2 months, and it's been like, I don't know, 7 months, and now it's finally finished almost. Yeah.
And subsequently, you get faster at each time. So the next book and the next book, not only are they faster because now you know the materials, the publisher, the printers to go through, but you get more skilled and at knowing what to do and what not to do. So really, that's just what it takes, a lot more time.
Are you doing your next coloring book with the same publisher who is publishing your journal?
No, this one is I'm just self-publishing. Cool. You never know what the next step is, but the first step, I'm just doing a self-published book.
Yeah, awesome. Definitely. So back to some more questions, a lot of which you have answered here. You work from basically your vision and you bring it to life on canvas or paper. And do you also have that same process for the worlds that you're creating? Like, is your envisioning process that you're kind of dreaming these worlds up all the time and maybe making notes about this and that thing? Or is it more like a piece by piece process?
Yeah, I've thought a lot about that, because I'm always trying to, because in order to be like successful as an artist, you kind of have to, branding is kind of like, I don't know, kind of have to brand yourself, like what is the thing that you're doing. And that's kind of been like a personal struggle for me, because I always think that I want to do a lot of things. But actually looking back, now that I have all the book projects and I have some paintings and stuff, I'm kind of seeing like a similar theme in all of them, even though I didn't kind of plan it. So that's been a really good thing. I think you should just create a lot of art, and then you kind of start to see a reoccurring theme. Usually what I see in my paintings is I love historical stuff, like especially like the Victorian age. I actually looked back on the Enchanted Valley journal that I did. It's very Victorian, and all the people are wearing Victorian clothes and stuff. And there's some fantasy elements. There are some fairies and stuff here, but that's also like very Victorian. So that's kind of that's the way I've been building this thing. So.
And we got to mention, because it just happens to be Friday the 13th, you also love the Halloween theme and the fall. Oops.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
One second, let's pause this.
Okay.
All right. Well, right as we were talking about Friday the 13th, the dog alarm went off. And so, again, we had to just mention, since it was Friday the 13th and Eeva loves Halloween and fall season and cooler weather, that it's just a fun time to be recording with her on this date. And it's full moon.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah, do you have any plans coming up? Are you like already planning anything for Halloween, or you just enjoy getting in the spirit? Do you actually do things and dress up and all that?
No, I don't. If I was in the US, I would really like to go to some like haunted houses or stuff. I watch those things on YouTube, like the haunted hay rides and stuff like that. So
yeah,
I would really like to do that maybe someday.
Oh, so that's right. It's not a Finnish holiday, right?
No, it's like every year they have something more, but it's not a traditional Finnish holiday. It's not like in the US, so it's totally different here, but people still really love it. And there's some stuff going on, but I just try to enjoy the whole season and get in the Halloween mood.
And we can always tell, because a lot of your art is we can see the seasonal themes. Like when it's winter, you have more of the winter themes going on with your paintings, and when it's fall, you have more of the pumpkins and all that. It's really fun.
I really like seasons as well. Those inspire me.
Yeah.
So I had a question on, sorry, there's a fly in my face. I had a question, when you're putting together your journals, your coloring books, when you're maybe doing a painting theme, anything you do that's thematic, and a lot of your stuff is, when you do series, are you starting with a theme in mind, or are you creating a collection of work and then seeing what theme sort of comes out through the art and deciding from there?
It's a little bit of both. Usually, for example, I did my solo show in New York. I kind of had a theme. I had a very loose theme. I was kind of thinking like forest creatures, fantastical people, and maybe some animal creatures. So it's a very loose theme, but still, like when you're doing a series, you have to have something. And I did the same thing for the Enchanted Valley journal. I just chose 3 themes that I like, that I'm inspired by, because you have to be excited about. If you're going to do a big project like this is like over 50 drawings, so it's a lot of work. So I just picked 3 themes that I like. It was like this fairy forest, Halloween, and kind of like a carnival theme. So I had 3 themes, and I just started drawing from there.
Cool.
You're mentioning carnival reminded me that Devani and the rest of the family, I haven't so much, have been watching the Amazon Carnival Row. Is that the name of it?
Yes, Carnival Row.
Carnival Row. Have you seen that?
I actually watched the trailer, but I haven't watched the show. But I know of it. So
yeah,
I think you'd like it. It's very Victorian steampunk, and it has Orlando Bloom, the Legolas guy, in Lord of the Rings. So
check it out.
Yeah, probably. It sounds like something you would enjoy.
Has all the weird creatures. It's all great.
So let's just see. I'm just going down the question list to see if we've gotten them all. And you've told us, shared this before, but the technical side is important, I think, especially for aspiring artists who are just getting into it. You mentioned that you scan your art, and so what are you using to scan it? And then also, do you sometimes photograph it and digitize it that way?
I do all my drawings. I scan them. I just have a basic like Canon printer that has a scanner as well. So I just use that. And when I do oil paintings, because you can't really scan oil paintings because they reflect light back, so it's very hard. Some people do it, but I haven't been successful with that. So I photograph my paintings, my oil paintings, and I just I have a Canon camera, DSLR, not anything fancy, just but still a basic digital camera.
Mm-hmm.
And it's better to use this than your iPhone because this has like a higher resolution. I try to get the highest resolution I can with this camera. So
what kind of lighting are you using when you photograph using that?
I have a setup. I have these lights that have the daylight bulbs, like it's like a colder natural light.
Mm-hmm.
So that's better for photographing paintings because if you have those yellow lights that you usually have, like for lighting your home, that's not the best light for photographing paintings. So
right.
but
You
you can get those in like any store and they're very cheap.
You mentioned that the oils reflect the light a lot, which is why you can't scan it. When you do the photographs of your oil paintings, are you doing that before you before you do the final glaze layer?
Yes. So the final layer of the oil painting is like a gloss varnish, and you have to photograph it before you add the gloss varnish because it will make the photographing even more difficult because then it's like all this like very glossy surface and you're trying to get a good photograph, so it's even harder. So I recommend photographing before you add the varnish.
Perfect.
Okay,
Awesome.
great. So one of the questions that I know our audience especially is interested in, especially those who are seeking to or are already selling their art or seeking to. So when you sell art, which renditions sell the best for you? Example, originals, poster prints, canvas prints, coloring books, which of those do you have a sense of that?
Yeah, it's a little bit of everything. What I try to do is always try to think of as many ways as I can to make money from my art. So selling originals is kind of a big thing for me, and usually online I sell mostly drawings, graphite drawings, some watercolor, and the ink drawings as well. Oil paintings are a bit harder to sell online because of course they're more expensive, and usually people who put more money into art want to see the actual painting in person before buying. So galleries, I think, are a really good thing for that if you want to sell original oil paintings or paintings that are a bit higher priced, or bigger work.
Yeah.
And I think conventions as well. Just find your just try to think like where your art would fit. Like for me, I do kind of like this fantasy themed paintings, so they go better in like maybe fantasy conventions or sci-fi or stuff like that. So
yeah. So the form then, it's sort of like all of it in a way.
Yeah, and I do prints of my work, so I sell those online, and I sell prints at conventions, and
Right.
also the books and everything. So
Right. But then since the prints are less expensive, then you can probably do more volume, but then because they're less expensive, they may not bring in, the revenue might be about equal to originals or books or something. Has that been your experience?
And with the prints, what I do online is that they're limited edition. So I just do 25 prints of each painting, and that's something I listen to a lot of art podcasts about like selling art, and that was a recommendation that I got, that if you do prints online, make them limited, because prints are very hard to sell, especially if you don't have a huge following. Like I don't have like trying to grow it all the time, but when you don't have a huge following, prints are a little bit hard to sell. So what I've done is that I just do 25, and kind of creates that like missing out feeling. Like if you really want the image, then you're maybe more likely to buy it, because you know that maybe this won't be available like next year because it's sold out or something. So
Right.
I think that's a good tip.
So it is a good tip. For me, I always think about, well, that means you can never sell it again. You know, it's like, oh no, you know, that's like a
Yeah,
hard
there's
thing.
that. Yeah, but I think especially if you're starting, like for me now, I sell a few prints here, a few prints there. Maybe in the future, when there's like more demand on the prints, maybe I could do like bigger prints, more higher priced, or do open edition as well as limited edition. And just I've seen that as well. Like you can do open edition, which it can be like a smaller print, or like a just more basic paper, and then you do limited edition that's like very nicely printed, like silk screen or something beautiful, and that's like more expensive, and those are just limited. So you could do that as well.
Right.
But I haven't done that yet, but it's an option.
How do you ship yours online when you do online orders? Do you ship them rolled in a tube or flat in a larger, like?
I ship them flat just because I don't sell big prints at the moment. I just sell small prints, so those go very well in just like cardboard envelopes that I have, and it's a convenient way to just ship them. But if
Yeah.
you have large prints, I would recommend rolling them up in a cardboard tube.
Do you have some customers ask you to ship them framed?
No, I have shipped original paintings in frames, but not prints. Prints are not framed. Yeah.
Okay.
Do you offer that, or you just don't want to get into managing all of what that would entail, like shipping everything framed? It would just add too much cost.
Yeah, and
In time.
yeah, so especially for the prints, they're because it's like a more affordable way to own the art. I think it's just maybe you can just find a frame that you like for the print, and for the originals as well, because I sell a lot of drawings online. Usually for those, I think people also want to choose their own frames. So
Yeah.
and yeah, it's more expensive to ship, and it can get damaged if it has glass or something. So, and maybe a tip for that is to do standard sizes. So when I do original drawings, like small drawings, they're always 8 by 10 inches.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
there's always we have a different standard here, like in Europe. But I found that the 8 by 10 is kind of universal. So it kind of fits, it's a standard size in the US and kind of a standard size here as well. So that's what I chose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you print them? Your prints?
I use my own printer.
Okay. So just
Yeah.
a good quality printer, and that's good enough?
Yeah, it's good enough for
Is
the small
your
prints.
the Canon, do you use the same printer and scanner? Like, is it together? Your Canon scanners
Yeah.
are also, yeah, okay.
And so what kind of paper are you printing your prints on?
It's like a thick, glossy photo paper. It's by Canon as well.
Okay.
So I find it to be pretty good. It's because it has the glossy surface, it kind of fits for my art, because the original paintings are also like glossy. So I thought that the photo paper would be best for my art. But it depends on like what kind of art you do, like what kind of paper you should choose.
Right.
You can even choose like a watercolor paper to print for art on if you want.
For the online orders, you mentioned like the US has a different standard size than in Europe, but does that mean most of your online purchases happen from US, or or is it just a mix?
They do. Most of the orders come from the US, and some come from Europe, but mostly from the US because I checked my Instagram. Like, I have the largest following in Los Angeles. I don't know how specific those statistics are, but I just had Los Angeles was first, and then it was New York, and then Helsinki, which is here in Finland. So,
well, I mean, those are two pretty big artsy areas of the United States.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that makes sense. Well, this has been super helpful, and as you know, we love what you do. We admire your dedication and your persistence and perseverance over years of growing your brand. And as we all know, it's not easy. And we were just actually talking about this yesterday, and then the podcast the previous day, I think it was the coffee break, we were saying that on the one hand, it's easier to get your work out in the world than ever before from the standpoint of the resources available, the tools, creating websites, printing, shipping, and all of that. And on the other hand, it's harder because there's so many more people doing it, that it's a more crowded marketplace. So what tips would you have for any new artists starting out, even including those who may not have even decided whether they want to get into selling art online and trying that? Like, are you selling from your Facebook? What are some of the top tips for anyone starting out that you might offer?
Well, one tip I would say is that you should just start sharing your art. And like, even for me, like, I've been drawing and painting all my life, but I've just been doing this like seriously trying to make this work for 5 years. And I kind of think that it's slowly starting to work. So don't get discouraged if it takes a lot of time. Like, I've been trying to do this for 5 years, with sometimes with more success and sometimes with less. So just keep doing it. And I think like for me, social media platforms have been really good. Instagram, I think, is the best for art, but Facebook is also great.
So when you say Instagram is good for art, I mean, of course, Instagram is a highly visual medium. So is that, when you say it's been great, has it been great for growing a following, or has it also been great for selling your art?
Actually, the gallery that I worked with, they found me on Instagram. And I do sell originals when I post them on Instagram, and I also sell prints and stuff. So, growing a following is it's a good thing to try to focus on that a little bit, even though you don't have a huge following, doesn't mean that you can't sell, because I already sell art and I don't have like tens of thousands. I have like maybe 5,000, 6,000, somewhere around there at the moment. But I'm trying to get it to 10,000, because when you have 10,000, you can do from your Instagram stories, you can do direct links to your website. So if you're selling, like, for example, a print, you can just, I think this is how it works. You can just do like swipe up, and then you can go to the website to buy it. So that's what I want to do, and that's what I'm trying to
on
grow on Instagram.
On Instagram, and for other tips for artists selling on that platform, have you noticed that do you go deep into tracking like exactly where your sales come from, so you know what to spend the most time on? And the follow-up question to that is, when you notice when you get engagement on Instagram, do a lot of the opportunities come out of people just discovering you, finding your work, and then saying, hey, how can I work with you? Or do you also notice like your website stats where people are clicking your link from Instagram and then buying prints? Do you know?
I do get a boost on my website visits when I post something like that people want to engage with on Instagram. And I haven't really looked a lot of of at the analytics, but I want to do more of that. What I've been actually focusing on right now is kind of like to use the right hashtags, because what I was kind of like a mistake that I did previously is that I tagged all the art hashtags, but actually I think a lot of artists do this mistake. They try to kind of like get the attention of other artists, and it's very hard to sell art to other artists.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
and I just realized I was using like hashtags like art and graphite art, and like people who want to buy art aren't specifically maybe following those hashtags. So what I would recommend and what I've been starting to do is that use more specific hashtags. Like if you're doing, for example, like if you're doing like Halloween art, there are people who love Halloween art. So maybe hashtag Halloween art or Halloween aesthetic or spooky drawing or something like that. Like try to be a bit more creative with the hashtags so
That's a
people can
great
find
point.
you.
Yeah.
So being more conscious of what a viewer and potential buyer would be looking into and interested in, as opposed to what other artists kind of just think that they want to put their art under.
And on one podcast, I got the tip about the hashtags is that try to use, don't use the ones that have like a million people, because when you search the hashtag, you can kind of see like how many people have used that. Don't use the one that has like millions of people. Use those that have like maybe a couple of thousand and maybe like 10,000, and use maybe a few like 100,000. So try to keep the number smaller so you can. That's a better way, because if you go and search the hashtag, there's a good chance that you will be the top post on that specific hashtag if it like only has like 10,000 followers or stuff. So
that's a great tip. In fact, it's very much the same with Google ranking organically for your site, and that is it's called long tail keywords. So you use the long tail keywords that the bigger accounts are not as worried about ranking for, and you have a better chance of ranking. So also, to all in our audience, please be sure to go to Eeva's page on Instagram. It's Eeva Nikunen, all one word, and follow her to help her get to 10,000. We look forward to that when that happens. And relative to your website, so your website is actually ranking for fantasy art, which gets 18,000 Google searches a month, but it's not on page one. So after we get off this call, we'll give you a few ideas on some keywords that you can write to that will help you move your site up in ranking for that huge keyword as well.
Oh,
okay, I don't want to give it away on the call just yet, because we want to give you a head start on that one. But let's see what I was
the challenge.
Yeah, the changeling.
Yeah.
So we forgot to ask you about this. You participated in an incredible group or collaborative project, kind of like an anthology of artists creating a deck of playing cards. I think it was hosted by the Changeling artist.
Yeah, I'm part of an artist collective called the Changeling Artist Collective. They do a Facebook auction of original art every month on Facebook. And we did a card deck last year and through Kickstarter. And yeah, it was really exciting. Like all the artists did 2 cards for the deck, and it's really beautiful. I'm actually waiting for my deck. It's in the mail, so I should be receiving it in hopefully next week, so I can see it for myself.
And awesome. We'll link to it. I'm pretty sure it's available on. Is it available on Amazon yet? Do you know?
It's a smaller run. I'm not sure if they're going to put it on Amazon. It's was for sale only through the Kickstarter, and they might still have some extra decks, but it was kind of like a limited run. So if you wanted one, you kind of had to participate in the Kickstarter. So I can't really give specifics about that at the moment.
Okay.
How you've been involved with this group, is Changeling, I think it's called, for a little while now. How has that helped your own brand growth? And I'm sure you'd recommend artists find different groups like that, right, to help them in establishing not only a support network of other artists, which I'm sure that happens when you're surrounded in a group like that, but how has that helped your brand growth?
Yeah, it's a good thing to join artist groups like that, because it does boost your people see you there and can easily find you because they're already coming there to see the other artists, so they might discover you there as well. And like I said, they do the monthly auction. I haven't been able to participate in every auction just because I haven't had time. I would really like to participate more, and that's something that I'm planning to do a bit more in the future. But I think it's a good thing, and also you can see what other artists who are in the same places you are, like what they're doing, and you get a lot of ideas from other artists as well.
Are you able to share if the artists who contribute cards to the card deck, for instance, actually receive compensation or profit sharing, or is it just more for the recognition of participation? If you're able to share that.
Yeah, well, it wasn't like none of the other artists we didn't get paid to do the art. So what you could do, like what I did, I sold the original paintings, and that were for that project. And we were thinking about like if there's like extra money left after the campaign, that would be distributed to the artists. But because of some extra costs with the printing, that wasn't possible. But none of us really expected this to be like a like a regular job. We just wanted to make the deck a reality, and kind of that was the point of the whole Kickstarter.
I'm glad you shared that, and that because it's such an important point in a number of for a number of reasons. One is anyone starting out, as we've all learned, we have to expect to do a lot of things for free for a period of time in order to get recognition and to grow our following.
It's like the mistake tuition, or not necessarily, obviously it wasn't a mistake, but just the learning tuition.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
The learning tuition.
Yeah, the tuition of doing business. So we can do business free on Facebook, but the tuition for that to get wider exposure is to pay for some ads if we want recognition, or we can get exposure in someone's card deck or auction. But part of the cost of that, instead of having to pay a membership fee or a show exhibit fee, it is the cost of doing the art and contributing. So there are, and we've, the other reason it's helpful for us is because we have aspirations to become more of a platform to help artists sell there and get recognition, and basically support artists in much the way the Changeling group is doing, as well as the Creative Live group. They're offering courses, and that's not really probably where we're going to go. It's more like, here's some, if you need a course, here's a course. If you need to learn how to sell your art, here's how to sell your art. Or if you want to collaborate, so for us it would be more like collaborating with journals. So right now we might use art that we get for free on Pixabay or Unsplash, or that our graphic artist in the Philippines creates for us very inexpensively. But our aspiration is to be able to collaborate with artists in our community to create things that bring attention to them, and eventually to pay them for it as well. So it's not just that they're getting exposure, but that we're able to, and similarly to help with networking, like artists and writers, children's book who want illustrators, or fantasy writers who want illustrators, just to become sort of that resource where people can connect with each other and form those relationships. But
like the community and collaboration aspect of being a creator.
Yeah, so I think that for us, the journey has been, as for you and in our audience, whether you're a visual artist or an author, a writer aspiring to be an author, to not expect that you're going to be making money at it to support you for quite some time, that it's really about, which is why it is so important, as you said earlier, Eeva, to build, create a Facebook page and start sharing your work, just to begin to grow your following, so that when the time comes that you have a body of work and you're ready to start selling, you'll have that option.
And we were following you back before you even fully had, I think, your website established, or maybe you had a simple blog or something, but I don't even remember if you had a website yet. But you were sharing, like, every day you'd have a post in like the afternoon our time, and it was just that consistent building over time of showing up, doing your drawing in the morning, sharing it on social media in the evening, working on your business, and that's really what it takes.
Yeah, just because I was actually at a convention talking to an aspiring artist. They were saying to me that they weren't sharing their art because it wasn't good enough. But it's like, you just have to start sharing, because like anything you do, like anything I did 5 years ago, I'm not happy with that. I'm still not happy when maybe like one drawing of like 20 is kind of like okay for me. So just don't let that stop you. Just share. And in selling art, the most important thing, I think, is the story behind the art. It's not is it like the best ink drawing in the world, or best oil painting. It's more of the story, and just being true to the things that you love and that you want to express through the art. And I think that's the most important thing.
That's
Beautiful.
Such a great point.
Yeah,
yes,
we've been talking about that a lot lately, of just incorporating the story of your creativity and creation and what you're doing and who you are, because people love seeing that. I mean, it's fun to go through an artist's feed and scroll back and see sort of their evolution in a sort of speed scroll of how they've evolved their creations.
Yeah, or their YouTube channel. And I think, so for you, I mean, your creations are so exquisite to anyone, I think, that views them. So we would never even imagine, as you might, that you're not satisfied with it. But it's really you're speaking about the heart of a true craftsman or craftswoman, artisan, with just your thing is not about making a lot quickly, but to make it beautifully and perfectly. And yet you've also, been at the place of thinking that you needed to increase the number of art pieces that you have, increase the volume of work in the world. So with your perfectionism around, your vision that you want to bring to life, understandably, have you been able to speed up your process even with that?
Yeah, a little bit. That's the thing that I still struggle with, is that it slows me down when I try to make the painting perfect, and of course it's never going to be perfect, but just to get it to that level where I'm like satisfied with it, because I always know that next year I will be a little bit better when I have more experience and stuff. So yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, I still struggle with that, but I'm always trying to get better. Just be a little bit faster, because I still I want to grow like the inventory I have on my website and do more prints and stuff, and that means that I have to have more paintings. And yeah, but I'm working on that every day.
Yeah.
But I would assume that some of the work you've been doing with your journals and coloring books even speeds up some of that process as well, because you don't have to paint those, and so you can have income coming in from a product that's already been created and established, and you're able to sell that to bring in some income, while you then are able to take the time to grow your art, your oil painting inventory, which does take longer just because of the nature of the medium as well.
Yeah, that was actually the initial inspiration behind the Enchanted Valley journal that I did, because I could do graphite drawings quite quickly, and it's a medium that I'm very comfortable with. So my idea was like, how can I use these graphite drawings that I do in a product? So that's how I came up with the journal. Like, I could illustrate a book quite fast, and Uh, and I thought, because I always like I like that the products that I make, I like them to be useful for people. At some point, I might do like maybe like a sketchbook where you can just see drawings of my art. But at this point, I like the idea more of like journals where people can write, and coloring books that people use to color. So just products that have some meaning. So it's not just another book that's gonna sit on your shelf and you look at it once and never look at it again. So
Yeah.
that was
Right.
the process.
Right. When speaking of that, so one other question on, you mentioned the story and the importance of story. We've been talking about that, as Devani said, recently, relative from two angles. One is the angle of what is the story of this creation. In other words, like the Autumn Princess, what is her story? Or what is the story of the artist who created the Autumn Princess, in what was her thought process? Which direction do you tend to go, and do you have a favorite between the two?
My art is very much based on the characters. It's not really about me. It's more about like because I do more like illustration based art. It's these are like Victorian themes. So I always try like try to take backseat with that and just
lovely. Well, and you do it
story.
so well.
Yes.
So remember that your art that is just okay to everyone else is perfect. It is.
Yes.
It is truly incredible
great
art,
talking
and
to
we're
you.
just have the conversation. Good talking with you. And again, thank you so much for sharing.
Yes.
I mean, you're 5 years going on 6 years into this journey, and you know how hard it has been, and yet how rewarding, and you wouldn't not do it.
And you've amassed so much knowledge around not only your own art process, but just around creating a product, creating several products, the process behind that, just your systems are just share and help people in the beginning stage now. That's awesome.
Yeah. So thank you, and we look forward to what's next, and to the publishing of your next coloring book, as well as seeing your Instagram get to 10K.
Yes.
Go follow Eeva Nikunen on Instagram, guys, and we will post all the links in this episode. So, all right, bye-bye.
Bye.